Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 24th of May, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. God, it feels good to say that after a 2.5 week break, and wow, did I come back at an amazing time. So obviously a lot to talk about today, but before I do that, I just wanted to give a quick big shout out to Whack Attack for filling in for me while I was gone. He did a bunch of great coverage around not just Rocket Pool, but Ethereum, so you can go check all of that out on his Rocket Fuel YouTube channel. So yeah, just again, another big thank you and shout out to Whack Attack for that. Alright, moving on to the biggest piece of news is the fact that the ETF was in the end approved. Now, of course, I don't think I have to even say this at this point, but this has made me one of the happiest people ever. And when I found out about this on the 20th of May, the fact that there was some substantial movement within the ETH ETFs, it became one of the best days of my life. Not because of the ETF itself, but because of the fact that I had held so strongly on my prediction that they were going to get approved, not based on just hopium or based on nothing. I had done such a thorough analysis over the last 5 or 6 months on the Refuel and on Twitter that seeing my analysis actually come true in the face of pretty much everyone else saying it wasn't going to happen, especially a lot of the quote-unquote experts, a lot of the lawyers, a lot of the people involved in the political process in the US, they all said it wasn't going to happen. Now, of course, it happened very abruptly. There was a 180 degree kind of spin around from the Democrats on crypto generally. It wasn't just the ETFs, it was that FIT 21 bill as well that got passed through the House, with a lot of Democrats voting in favor of it that had traditionally been bearish on crypto. So I'm going to get into all of that. But before I get into the ETF stuff, the FIT bill stuff, a lot of the kind of infighting that I actually saw happen in the last 2.5 weeks within the Ethereum ecosystem, I do want to talk about what I did on my break. Now, one thing that I really wanted to hit on, and I've been very much looking forward to hitting on this with you guys, because I think it's a very insightful kind of piece of information that not information, but piece of kind of, I guess, like, maybe epiphany is the better word for it. It's an epiphany that I had while I was on my break, but essentially, it was funny because what ended up happening was that from May 6th until about May 20th, I had zero exposure to anything crypto related. I removed all of the apps that I usually use, like Twitter and Discord and TradingView, from my home screen. I disabled the notifications. I basically made it so that I wasn't exposed to crypto in any way at all. I went full cold turkey on it. As you guys know, I've described my relationship with crypto as an addiction. It really was that. So I went full cold turkey with it. And that meant that I was not exposed to it at all. I wasn't exposed to it in mainstream media. I wasn't exposed to it watching TV, watching going out and hanging out with people, friends and family and stuff like that. I wasn't exposed to it at all. Now, the reason why I say I had an epiphany here was because it really verified, or at least kind of validated my long-term held thesis that most of the world pays zero attention to crypto for most of the time. Like, I think that in the last maybe 6 months of a bull market is where the rest of the world pays attention to it. And that's simply because the mainstream media, the kind of mainstream sphere is just not talking about it when the prices aren't going up every day, when BTC and ETH aren't at all-time highs every day. Obviously, this isn't a new insight, but it really did show me just how true that is, because I went from being so involved in crypto, from literally when I woke up to when I went asleep, being so exposed to it every single day, that I had lost sight of the fact that we live in such a small bubble. We may think we're much bigger than what we are, but we live in such a small bubble where we're exposed to this stuff every day, so we must think that everyone else sees this. We must kind of think to ourselves, why can't everyone else see how good of an asset ETH is, how awesome of a network Ethereum is? And the simple answer to that is the fact that, as I said, most people don't pay attention unless ETH and BTC are hitting new all-time highs every other day. Mainstream media is covering it. There's FOMO in the air, right? And that usually signals the last like 6 or so months of a bull market, of course, especially when it's like everywhere in the mainstream kind of cycle there. And it also validates my thesis that retail still isn't here, really. It's really been a institutional driven, ETF driven, kind of like insider crypto money driven bull market up until this point, which is usually what early bull markets are like, early to mid bull markets are like there. So that was probably the most unique insight that I kind of validated on my break. And honestly, unless you've actually done this, you probably won't understand, or I guess like fully appreciate what I'm saying here. So maybe that's a little bit of I guess advice to you guys. If you are thinking of taking a break from crypto generally, just to see what it's like to not be exposed to it every day, like even just a week, you don't have to do the full 2.5 weeks, but doing a week, it really is cathartic. It really is eye-opening for sure. But that was my one unique kind of key insight there. But a lot of you wanted to know what I actually did on my break. So I'm not going to spend too much on this. I definitely want to move on to the ETF stuff. But mainly, I did things that I just wanted to do outside of crypto. I didn't force myself to do things. Like, I had a whole list of things that I wanted to do. And I looked at the list and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I feel like doing. I'm not going to force myself to do this, force myself to do that. I'm not going to say to myself, oh, you've only got 2.5 weeks to do this, and then it's back to the crypto grind. I didn't want to do that. I didn't feel like that was the best use of my time. So what I did was I looked at the list and I basically turned it over. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ignore that list. I'm going to do what I feel like doing. And that's what I did. I spent a lot of time with friends and family. I did a lot of stuff around not on my computer. Essentially, I tried to go more with my friends, doing non-computer stuff. Tried to spend more time with my fiance, spend more time with my family, just do non-computer things. But when I was on the computer, I was playing games. Now, I think there was really just one game that I played for the majority of the time, and that was World of Warcraft. You guys know, if you've been listening to me for a while, that I was a really big World of Warcraft player back when I was a teenager. It basically was my whole thing as a teenager, and I've played on and off since then. But World of Warcraft currently has two main modes. They have the retail mode, which is basically the current version of the game, and they have something called WoW Classic, which is the classic version of the game that they re-released about 5 years ago. So I played a lot of that, and there's a mode on Classic WoW called Hardcore, where if you die permanently on that server. So that was really fun. It kind of rejuvenated the game for me. So I'd been doing that for really the bulk of the time that I was on a computer. Like, it was kind of funny. Whenever I was on my computer, I was kind of bored, because I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing crypto stuff on here, and that's all I've been doing on a computer for a very long time now, besides playing games here and there. So really, anytime that I was on my computer, I was just playing World of Warcraft, really. And when I was off it, I was doing a bunch of other things there. And also, in that same kind of on that same note, my phone also became incredibly boring, because I'm not really on other social apps. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but I don't use it. I don't really post pictures there. My Instagram feed is very trash. There's Snapchat, I don't use them. I haven't used that in years. Facebook, I definitely don't use. So, most of the stuff that I did on my phone, or the vast majority of it, was crypto stuff. And when that was gone, I had no real use for my phone outside of being on a few chat apps with friends and family. That's all I was really using it for. I wasn't really using it for anything else. So that was also kind of freeing there. But last thing I'll say on my break as well is that the special thing for me wasn't just being able to do what I wanted outside of crypto and just like basically relaxing and doing that. It was being able to focus. Because usually when I would play a game or when I would do something else, even away from my computer, I wouldn't be able to focus, because I'd be checking Discord, I'd be checking Twitter, I'd be alt-tabbing out of my game to something else. I'd be checking something crypto related. I'd be checking emails, doing this, doing that. There was no kind of like focus. There was no, hey, let's just play this game for a couple of hours and don't do anything crypto. It was, okay, I'm going to play the game for 10 minutes, alt tab, all right, I'll reply to some Discord messages, I'll go on Twitter, and then I'll go back to my game for 10 minutes. That's not playing a game. And the game basically becomes like a void fill for when I'm not doing something in crypto. So it was really good to be able to just actually focus on things and not be distracted by crypto. And in that vein as well, I actually was able to have my first LAN with my best friend, my best real life friend, who's not really into crypto. So that was really helpful as well, in 5 years. So the last time we did LAN actually was with two other friends. So there was a total of 4 of us at my old house, and we actually did it for WoW Classic when it first released in 2019. But even then, like, I wasn't off crypto. I was still very distracted by it. So it wasn't the same experience. Whereas this time it was just full on playing the game, focusing on that, chatting with each other about a bunch of different things, just not doing anything crypto related at all. And that was also really refreshing and really awesome. And I had kind of forgotten what that felt like, because it hadn't been something that I had done for a very long time there. So that was basically the bulk of my break there. Not too long, 2.5 weeks. I mean, it did feel kind of long because of the fact that I did actually experience withdrawal symptoms from crypto after the first few days. It was funny, like the first few days of my break, I was like, yes, this feels awesome. I'm free. Do I even want to go back? It's kind of funny how the mind works. But then I think like on the 4th or 5th day of my break, I started having withdrawals. I'm like, oh my God, I miss it so much. Oh my God, what's happening? Am I missing something? And I had a little bit of a FOMO, but that only lasted for about a day. And then from there, it was mostly, I would say, smooth sailing. And then on May 20th was when one of my friends messaged me, my real life friends, he messaged me and he just said, bro. And when he did that, I was just like, look, I kind of know what this is about. So, hey, if it is about what I think it's about, then I'll just Google. So I Googled the ETH ETF. Before even replying to my friend, I just Googled ETH ETF. And that's when I saw what had happened with the 19B4 forms actually having movement on them. And then the Bloomberg guys upping their chances of the approval from 25% to 75%. So essentially, I saw that, and then from that, I actually jumped on Twitter for a little bit just to see a bit more comments about that, and that's kind of where half of my break ended, I think, on the 20th of May because of that. And I think that's a pretty fair thing to do because I checked the price as well, and of course, I knew the price had rocketed from there. So yeah, I checked that, but then since then, I've been trying to like not go on Discord, not go on Twitter too much, and then of course, I came back fully. Today, I woke up at earlier than usual. I woke up at 8 a.m. today, my time, and I saw that the ETFs had been approved. So that's when I put my first tweet out asking people if they studied May 23rd. Because, of course, I was right. Of course, I was one of the only people that was right on this. And, I'm not one to stroke my ego. I don't want to do that. I'm not one to kind of brag or one to go on Twitter and start like making fun of people who were wrong. They were wrong. That was simple as that. Everyone knows they were wrong. And it feels amazing being right in the face of everything. But I think there's a wider story here, and this is where I think like my conversation about my break ends and the conversation to the ETF moves to now, or conversation moves to the ETF stuff, because there is a lot to unpack here, guys. It's really not just about the ETH ETF. As excited as I am about the fact that the ETH ETFs have been approved, and as bullish as that is for ETH as an asset, over the longer term, especially, there is a much bigger picture being painted here when it comes to regulations towards crypto. Now, I will jump into that in a sec. I do want to just talk about the actual ETH ETFs for a little bit here. So, what exactly happened here? What is the movement happening here? When are they going live for trading? All that. So, from my understanding, from what I've read, what happened was that the 19B4 forms were approved for all of the issuers, from what I can see, but there are still the S-1 forms that need to be processed for the ETFs to actually start trading. Now, this can take up to a few weeks from here. So essentially, the ETFs are approved today, but it's not like the BTC ETFs where they're going to be trading, maybe next week on Monday or something like that. We're going to have to wait a few weeks for this to happen, which is totally fine. I don't think it matters whether they start trading today or on Monday or in a few weeks' time. I actually think it might be more bullish, but that they start in a few weeks' time, because as you saw from the price action, literally everyone was offside on this, guys. Like the fact that everyone was basically fudding ETH over the last 2.5 weeks from what I saw. I went back and read a bunch of Twitter comments. There was so much FUD about ETH. People saying ETH was dead. ETH BTC was going down. Other coins versus ETH were going up. It was just like really, really bad sentiment. And I saw some like old kind of longer term investors start capitulating from what I read on Twitter. I went back and checked it all today, and I kind of looked at that, and I'm like, this is giving me like 2019, 2020 vibes, because in late 2019, early 2020, it was the same thing. And then what pulled us out of this negative sentiment was DeFi summer, essentially in mid 2020 there. And obviously what's pulled us out of it this time is the ETH ETF that kind of happened there. But yeah, I fully believe that most people, if not the vast majority of the market, is completely out of position on ETH. And I don't think we've seen the bulk of the move at all here. I think obviously we saw ETH put in its largest ever daily candle, but I think most of that move was traders obviously speculating on it, a lot of shorts getting blown up, a lot of people FOMOing in, and just the fact that the market had been pricing in a denial for many months now, had not been pricing in an approval at all. Anyone who still thought it was being approved was called crazy, was called insane, was saying, give up on that, what the hell are you smoking? I mean, I know I took the brunt of this because I stuck to my May 23rd prediction, up until it got approved, right? So the market is very, very offside here. And that's what makes this incredibly bullish, because it means that not only are we now going to get ETF flows into ETH, just like BTC has had the ETF flows, which have been constant and steady, as I've described before, they're passive flows, but we also get all of the crypto native money that has been offside on ETH now flooding back into ETH because they don't have a position. When you're out of position, you want to try really, really hard to get into position, but you don't want to disturb the market. You don't want to be market buying, say you want to buy $100 million worth of ETH. You don't want to be market buying that because you're going to move the market price. You want to get your best price that you can, whether that's via TWAP, whether that's via OTC, whether that's via just firing into the order books and trying to stack ETH. And you want to do that before the ETFs start trading, because you may be comparing it to when the BTC ETF started trading, where essentially BTC went to all-time high after that. Yeah, it kind of like dumped off when the ETFs approved and took about a month to start going up again, or kind of break where it was at the ETF approval date. But from there, it went to like 70K plus. So you're looking at that and you're thinking, holy shit, right? I was not expecting the ETH ETF to be approved. I've got all this money that is stuck in these other assets. I now think what everyone's going to do is they're going to flood into ETH. I need to get it to ETH as well. So what you're going to see is you're going to see basically ETH become this black hole that sucks a lot of this crypto native money in way before the ETFs start trading. I know I said the ETFs will start trading in a few weeks' time. You're going to see the bulk of this happen within the next couple of weeks, in my opinion. And I don't think it's crazy to say that ETH will be at all-time high before the ETFs even start trading because of the fact that there's just such a FOMO now. The market does not price things in 3 days. It's only been 3 days, guys, since we started getting wind of the fact that they're actually going to be approved publicly because the Bloomberg guys changed their stance here, and that's where the majority of the market changed its stance as well, until obviously it became reality today with the approval there, or reality yesterday with the approval there. So you're going to see some very positive movement here. So that to me is one of the most bullish things for ETH going forward. But then you just throw in all the other reasons why ETH is a bullish asset. All the things that I've been talking about for years, guys. The fact that it's net deflationary, the fact that it's being used in staking more and more over time, the fact that the layer 2s are growing, the fact that that we have new money coming in for ETH via the ETF. So there's so many reasons to be bullish on ETH that, the ETF stuff really is just more fuel to the fire here. And finally, the negative sentiment around ETH and Ethereum has changed. As much as I hate that it's changed because of the price action, but that's how crypto works, right? And it's changed. And now people are actually looking at everything else and thinking to themselves, wow, okay, Ethereum's not dead. ETH's not dead. Well, it was just the ETF stuff that was holding ETH down, which I had said for months was happening as well, but as I said, I don't want to stroke my own ego too much here, but all of that has kind of happened there. And on top of that as well, what I will say with regards to the ETFs is that the Bloomberg guys, like the main people that I've been following since the BTC ETFs, and they've been really good with their analysis with the BTC ETFs. They were kind of with their analysis of the ETH ETFs. They kept ignoring some facts, like the fact that they kept going on about the fact that, there's not going to be much demand for an ETH ETF because there wasn't much demand for the futures ETH ETF, and then they ignored the fact that there's going to be lawsuits because if it was denied because of the fact that Grayscale already sued over the same thing with the BTC futures. There was a bunch of stuff there, and I didn't really appreciate their analysis of the ETH ETF stuff there at all. And then it was kind of funny because right up until this week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, when their odds changed from 25 to 75%. They were just like mega bearish on it, right? They were really, really bearish on the ETH ETF stuff. And then, of course, I think it was Eric Balchunas basically said that the people who got the prediction right were just wish casting or were just lucky, which, it kind of annoyed me because I'm like, I'm not going to go over here and stroke my ego and kind of dunk on you guys. But hey, the fact that you're saying that we just got lucky, the people who actually believed in May 23rd just got lucky, really, really annoyed me. And that was because of the fact that I actually had been calling this based on a lot of thorough analysis that I've done. All of you guys that have listened to and watched the refuel over the last few months, you know this. So I'm preaching to the choir here. But essentially, I even picked the political stance because a lot of people are saying that the reason why the Democrats changed their tune here, and this will probably bring us into the conversation around how this is bigger than the ETH ETF, and this is more about the regulatory side towards crypto, that it seems like, this is speculation. I don't think it's all this, but it seems like the Democrats changed their stance on crypto due to the fact that Trump endorsed crypto. I believe it was like a day before they changed their stance. Trump just went really hard on crypto, endorsed it, started accepting crypto donations, and obviously it being an election year, that's a really big deal. Now, this is not something new, guys. This is not something unknown. I called this months ago. I said that the political ramifications of this are vast. I did say that I didn't know how big the voting bloc was for crypto within the US. I didn't know if the Democrats actually cared enough about crypto to change their policies based on the fact that they could lose an election based on it, or if they believe they could lose an election based on it. But I think we now have some proof that it is a big voting bloc. I do think we have proof that crypto is making a lot of waves within DC, within the US political sphere here. And again, this is not new. I predicted this months ago that one of the reasons that I foresaw, and one of the big reasons, and one of my strongly held beliefs, that the pivot could come where the SEC would basically be forced to approve the ETFs was because of the political pressure. So that was not luck. That was not wish casting. That was proper analysis done based on the facts and circumstances. And the most hilarious part about this is that I am not someone who's paid to do this. I'm not a Bloomberg analyst who is paid to do this, whose entire job is to do this. I am an Ethereum commentator. I am an Ethereum educator. I focus most of my time on the Ethereum tech side. I do not focus on the ETF for most of the part. Most of my coverage of the ETF probably took, 5 to 10% of my time over the last few months, even though it obviously is a big deal. I didn't spend all day, every day on this. I'm not an expert on it. I don't know what a 19B4 form is or an S1 is. I don't know US politics. I don't know the inner workings of the SEC. I don't claim to know any of that. I don't claim to be an expert on any of that. But what I do know is how to follow the facts and circumstances. I do know how to apply logic to situations. I do know how to reason from first principles. I don't just rely on hopium. I don't let my bias cloud my judgment, or at least I try not to. People were saying, oh, you're just an ETH maxer. That's why you're biased towards the ETH ETF. Not at all. I was following the BTC ETF using the same thing. I was basically one of the earliest people saying that I thought the BTC ETFs would be approved from the earliest day, from when BlackRock filed for the ETF here. And I think that that's the only thing that I kind of got annoyed about here, is the fact that I was right and people were still saying it was just luck, when anyone who had been following me for the last few months knew that it wasn't luck, knew that it was based on thorough analysis of the actual facts and circumstances available to us here. Anyway, I don't want to kind of go on more about that. It's a bit of a rant there. But what I do want to do is open this up to the conversation about how this is more than just about the ETH ETF, because of the fact that, yeah, it seems like the Democrats overnight, based on, whether it's based on Trump's rhetoric or not, I'm not going to kind of opine on that, but they changed their stance here. They seem to be very pro-crypto now. Not all of them, not Gary Gensler, he definitely is still negative towards crypto, not some of the other high-ranking Democrats, such as Brad Sherman and I think Maxine Waters. Those people, especially Elizabeth Warren, I don't think they have changed their tune or anything like that. But enough Democrats have that it seems to have shifted things. And it's not just the fact that they approved the ETH ETF, even though there were a lot of signs that they were going to deny it. There are a lot of signs that the SEC was going to try and go after ETH as a security, which actually I should mention that the fact that the SEC has approved a commodity-based trust for these ETFs, for ETH, means that the SEC has basically admitted that they are going to let ETH be regulated as a commodity and not a security. So we've put to bed the security aspect, or I guess like the security argument against ETH. Like, that's it. It's finished. We should not hear about it again. Staking is a whole other argument, and I saw, as I predicted, that all the issuers removed staking from their ETF because that was obvious that they were going to do that. But I do think the SEC is still going to go after various staking products, so we're going to have to see how that plays out there for being a security or an investment contract, whatever you want to call it. But when it comes to the actual asset we know as ETH, right, obviously, that there's no deeming that a security, and that has downstream effects into the SEC's case against Coinbase and Binance and Kraken over the other assets that they have said that are securities. That has effects there as well. So there's just a Pandora's box that has really been opened here with this change in stance. But there was also a new set of legislation that was passed through the House. So it still needs to pass the Senate and then needs to be signed by Biden to make it into law. But it is a very nice piece of legislation that was passed called the I think it's a FIT 21 Act. Now, this had been in the works for a while, and it actually sets out some pretty clear guidelines on how to regulate crypto. Now, I don't have the guidance in front of me, but I'm going to bring up this tweet thread from Jasper. You guys know Jasper. I'm going to bring it up here for you guys. This does a really great job of breaking down what he believes to be the most important aspect of the FIT 21 bill, which is a 5-pronged decentralization test to determine whether or not an asset is a digital commodity. Now, you can go give this thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But the bill is full of things like this. There are some things in the bill that aren't great and can be amended before it's voted on at the Senate, on the Senate floor, and then before it's signed into law by President Biden here. But essentially, the fact that they've got something like this in the act basically says to the SEC, you guys haven't been regulating crypto as you should. We have to basically put in new legislation in order to regulate crypto and to define what is a security and what is a commodity. So here it is, essentially. So this is not only, as I said, good for the ETH ETF that the Democrats have changed their tune here, but the fact that this passed the House with a lot of Democrat support means that it is now possible that it could pass the Senate and then be voted into law, and we actually get good crypto legislation, or any crypto legislation really, that can protect crypto's interests in the US and protect crypto in the US and end, or hopefully kind of really weaken this absolute clusterfuck that the SEC has brought upon crypto over the last couple of years. So that, to me, is the most bullish thing about the last week or the last few days. Not so much the ETH ETF being approved, as bullish as that is for ETH. This is bullish for all of crypto, obviously for ETH, but for all of crypto, which is going to benefit all of us. So I actually can't believe that this happened. I was very surprised that this happened, because when I saw the ETH ETF news, I was just like, okay, I'm not too surprised about that, because I went and looked at the reasoning on the 20th, and I saw that there was a political shift there. So I was like, you know what? I get that. The Democrats probably don't want the SEC to be in the news for the next few months leading up to an election, and only in the news for the negative stuff, like getting sued over not approving the ETH ETF and breaking the law again because they had to approve it. They even said in their approval message that they were approving it because it basically fit the law to approve it. There was nothing against the law to disallow it. They even looked at the futures and spot correlation analysis and said, okay, yeah, this checks out. This is what we want to see here. And on top of that, the funny thing is that the commissioners delegated the approval authority to the SEC staff. So the commissioners themselves didn't even vote on this, because they don't have to vote on this. They can just be approved. From my understanding, by the SEC staff with delegation powers, and they didn't comment on it either. So Gensler didn't make a stupid comment on Twitter about it. The other commissioners didn't make their comments about it, whether they were for or against it. We don't know how they voted, and we probably won't know how they voted if they do eventually a vote on it internally here as kind of a stamp of approval, or I guess like dotting your I's, crossing your T's sort of thing, which again falls into the fact that what I said a couple of months ago, where essentially the SEC is done racking up losses. The Democrats cannot afford this, because what's going to happen if they did deny the ETH ETF, this is the calculus that I think that they did, is that because Trump is now kind of pandering to the crypto audience and is like pro-crypto here, he would hit on that, and he would keep hitting the Democrats, keep hitting the SEC on this, and keep saying, as we're leading up to the elections in November, oh, the Democrats are anti-crypto, look at them breaking the law here, look at them doing this, and he keep putting attention on it. And that's something that they definitely do not want. And I remember I even said, like, even maybe a couple of months ago, I don't know exactly when I said it, someone can find the video if you want to, I said that I thought that the SEC would end up just approving the ETH ETFs because they want to get it out of their hair. They don't want it hanging over them, especially in an election year for the Democrats. They don't want it hanging over there. They don't want it being in the news cycle. They just was like, okay, let's just approve this, and we don't have to deal with this for another couple of years at least, because there's no other assets that are going to get ETFs, because no other assets have regulated futures markets, and so on and so forth. And that seems to be exactly what they did. The fact that the commissioners themselves didn't even vote on it is even more hilarious, because it means that essentially, they were like, we don't want anything to do with this. We hate that we have to deal with this, especially Gensler. Let's just delegate it to the staff. They'll approve it. Let's do it quietly. And then, that's it. We're on our merry way from there. It's out of our hair. We don't have to worry about this anymore. It's not in the headlines anymore, which is really great to see. But as I said, the bigger picture item here is the fact that the Democrats seem to, not all of them, but like a nice bulk of them, seem to have shifted their stance on crypto and are more pro-crypto here, which is what we all want to see, especially those living in the US. The tides have turned, my friends. These are bullish tides, definitely. I do think that with the BTC and ETH both having ETFs now, that's going to mean that both of those assets go into price discovery again relatively shortly. I think you could see this over the next few weeks, definitely. And then they'll be on a level playing field as well. I'm very glad that ETH is on a level playing field with BTC now. I didn't think it was fair that BTC had an ETF and ETH didn't. And then there is the long tail of crypto assets that are still going to be majority, I guess, like pretty much not even just majority, like 99% of the money that goes into these other assets will be crypto natives and new people to crypto. So keep that in mind when playing with other things. I think, it's not investment advice, but essentially ETH and BTC are now in their own little world and will be there for quite a while, whereas the other assets still exist in the crypto native world. So it's going to be very hard to invest and trade other assets going forward, I think. I think ETH, very easy at this point. You just buy and hold like you always do. If you want to take profits, as I've always said, you want to be taking profits when things are really, really hot, when it feels like, new money retail is here. And I'll kind of give my opinions on that as time goes on then. But yeah, that's basically everything on the kind of ETF side of things, everything on the political side of things. I will probably cover this Fit 21 bill as I learn more about it. I haven't had much time to catch up on things because I've only come back over the last, I guess, like 48 hours, and a lot of that time has spent catching up with a lot of people one-on-one. I had a lot of messages I had to reply to, a lot of work-related stuff. I guess like work-related stuff, meaning like non-Daily Gwei related stuff there. And I also wanted to just check what I had missed out on, which brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was, I'm not going to spend too much on this because I don't think this is something that a lot of people want to relive from what I see for the last 2.5 weeks. But essentially what happened was that I went back and I looked on Twitter and I looked at a bunch of things that happened. So there was a lot of infighting in the Ethereum community. And I think this was definitely because the ETH price was stuck at like 3K. I went back and looked at the chart. It's basically stuck at 3K. ETH BTC went to a new local low. Some of the other assets against ETH were going up, and people were just coping over that. And people were just bored of the market because of that. And because of that, we saw a lot of infighting about things like conflicts of interest between Ethereum Foundation people taking advisorships at big Ethereum projects. We saw a lot of infighting about people saying, oh, Ethereum needs a marketing department because no one knows about Ethereum. We saw a lot of infighting around various kind of things like, oh, no one understands the Ethereum roadmap. This is why ETH sucks. Which, if I was around at that time, that rhetoric, reading that on Twitter, like just seeing how toxic it was, that probably would have burnt me out completely. I probably wouldn't even come back. Like, that's how bad it looked from going back on it now, and how bad I felt reading it. Honestly, I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is really bad. And then, of course, all of that changed because of the price action. All of that changed because of the ETF news, which kind of annoys me because I think my number one issue after having my break, I think I kind of came to the conclusion that my number one issue with the crypto ecosystem is that everything is so closely tied to the price action, whether it's conscious or subconsciously. People do this all the time. Even like the long-term Ethereum believers were coping over this on Twitter, when essentially whether the price is going up or down shouldn't be relevant to things, because as I will actually show you guys in a sec, there was nothing fundamentally wrong with Ethereum or ETH during that period. Again, it was only a 2.5 week period, but there was nothing wrong. There was actually a lot of things right. And I actually went and looked at Grow the Pie, which tracks layer 2 usage, as you guys know. Look at this. We're at all-time high layer 2 usage over the last 2.5 weeks. So, okay, ETH isn't dead, Ethereum isn't dead, the layer 2s are growing. So where was all this negative sentiment coming from? You go to L2Beat, the activity is still at the highs, not all-time highs, but the scaling factor is still at the highs. The TVL is basically at, at the highs as well. Even before the ETF news pumped everything, it was basically at the highs. And ETH staking as well is going really well. People are still staking, validators are coming online. It's getting more distributed, Lido's market share is coming down, all those good and positive things there, as you can see on my screen. So why was there so much negative sentiment in the community? And it was really just because of the price action, because the short-term price action was not reflecting the fundamentals. And this is, as I said, my number one issue with this ecosystem, and actually what ends up burning me out the most is the fact that the sentiment so closely follows the price, which is something that I try not to do. I don't try to be bullish or bearish on something just because ETH is, going up one day and ETH is going down another day. I try to be bullish based on the long-term prospects of these things. That's what's kept me so bullish on the Ethereum roadmap, on the Ethereum ecosystem. If you're just looking at the short term, of course you're going to burn yourself out. Of course you're going to feel really shitty because you're looking at the short-term price action, and you're looking at like maybe even a few months of price action, and you're extrapolating that out to like the 5 to 10 plus year roadmap of Ethereum, and you're imagining the 5 to 10 year roadmap of Ethereum as those few months, which is completely wrong. So when I saw all this, when I read back on all this drama, and then I saw the whiplash in sentiment, because it literally was a complete whiplash. There was one day, it was the day before the ETF news came out, where sentiment was literally at rock bottom. I'd never seen it so bad. Not since late 2019, early 2020 had the sentiment been that bad. And the thing is that in late 2019, early 2020, it was somewhat justified because there was still an open question around, will Ethereum survive? Will Ethereum actually provide value here? Is DeFi actually going to be a thing that people like and use? Like, so on and so forth, right? Whereas this time, there was none of that. We know all of the stuff that Ethereum can do. We know that the L2s are working. The L2s are at all-time high usage. We know that the Ethereum roadmap is very well defined now and is being executed on. There's so much stuff that's happening there. So again, why was the sentiment so bad? It was because of the price. Because as soon as the ETF news came out, and as soon as the ETH price went up a lot, and as soon as ETH BTC went up a lot, the sentiment literally changed completely. It was like a binary change. It was 0 one day, one the next. And it was actually insane to go back and look at the mood, look at the whiplash here. Because what I did was I went to different people's profiles and I went to their replies. like people in the Ethereum ecosystem like David Hoffman and DC Investor and Eric Connor, all the big names. And I went to their replies and what they were replying to and went to the sentiment and kind of judged it from that. And I saw this and I'm just like, and I spoke to them also kind of during the day today as well. And I saw all this and I'm just like, holy shit, that change in sentiment is actually insane. And it's not just insane from kind of the perspective of the fact that we're so sensitive to price movements within crypto, but it's insane from a mental perspective as well. Because imagine what that does to a mental state to be whiplash like that just based on price. Like, can you imagine if you're the kind of person that is either bullish or bearish on Ethereum based on what its price is at any given day? Like, that to me is insane. Like, you shouldn't be bullish or bearish on Ethereum just based on the ETH price on any given day. It's a random walk. No one knows what the price of ETH is going to be on any given day. Long term, obviously, I strongly believe the ETH price is going to continue to go up. I strongly believe the Ethereum ecosystem is going to keep winning. And I strongly believe that the Ethereum roadmap is the best one that exists within crypto to scale a blockchain sustainably to the world. But that's not going to play out over the couple of days, guys. Like, this is just insane to me that people do this. And I understand if you're new to crypto, like you don't know any better. But these are long-term people that were doing this. And I was looking at this, I was like, holy shit, like, this is flashbacks to late 2019, early 2020, but without the fact that back then it was existential for Ethereum. Now it's not. We know Ethereum is winning, regardless of what the price is doing. So that whiplash, as I said, is probably the number one thing that I hate about the crypto ecosystem that burns me out the most. And I'm going to try my best to avoid that going forward. I'm actually going to change my relationship with crypto going forward. I forgot to mention this before. I'm allocating a maximum of maybe 2 to 3 hours. I probably extended out to 3 hours, so I think I need 3 hours a day to crypto. And outside of that, I'm not going to be doing crypto stuff. I'm not going to endlessly scroll through crypto Twitter. I'm not going to spend all day on Discord. As much as I love hanging out with you guys in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, it is mentally taxing because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in there. I'm not going to look at the ETH price every so often and kind of look at it and be like, oh, okay, ETH is this price here, ETH is that price there, because I don't even know why I do it, since I don't even care about what the short-term ETH price is. It has no relevance to me at all, as I just finished explaining why. So I'm going to allocate a maximum of 2 to 3 hours per day to crypto, and I'm going to time that. I'm going to make sure I'm disciplined about that there as well. And also, it kind of falls into the lifestyle changes I made with my break as well. I forgot to mention that on my break, I actually started riding my bike again. So I was doing 90-minute bike rides in the morning. So essentially I changed my sleeping pattern. So I now go to bed at 1 a.m., wake up at 9 a.m., have breakfast and coffee, out of the house by 10 a.m. on my bike ride, back by about 11:30 a.m., 12 p.m., depending on, if I leave at 10 a.m. exactly or not, have my lunch, and then I jump into other things that I was doing. So that's how I'm probably going to do it going forward when it comes to crypto. Maybe I'll do half an hour while I'm having my coffee and my breakfast, then I'll go on my bike ride, then I'll be back into it for a little bit, and then later in the day I'll do my video, of course, do the refuel, but that's going to be my new kind of pattern with crypto, because being exposed to it like I was, as basically an addict who always needed his fix, was not healthy at all. It definitely was not healthy. It was not something that I recommend anyone should be doing. We are not made for that. As humans, we are made for being more expressive with our time, being made to do different things, not just one thing, and not doing one thing like constantly as well. Like, that is what burned me out, I think, there. But yeah, enough on the infighting stuff. I don't want to rehash all of that because it seems to be fine now, which is good. But yeah, I think that's it on that one. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today, and as I said before, I wasn't going to cover all the news from the last 2.5 weeks because I wanted to ask you guys what you wanted me to cover. So again, a reminder, the next episode of the refuel will be on Monday. There'll be no mega episode. There's not going to be split up episodes that I'm going to do over the weekend or anything like that. The next episode will be on Monday. Please let me know what you want me to cover from the last 2.5 weeks that you really want my opinions on, that you really want my takes on. Let me know anywhere. YouTube comments, Twitter, Discord. I will check everywhere. I will collate that all together, and then I will give my thoughts on Monday, because I have an idea of what happened outside of the infighting stuff, of all the updates that happened over the last couple of weeks, the core dev stuff especially. I'm going to cover that regardless on Monday, I think. But also the stuff with, as I mentioned before, the conflicts of interest with the advisors to Eigenlayer, particularly like Justin Drake and Dan Crad, and what that means for the ecosystem, and I'll give my take on that. And also, I think that Eigenlayer ended up announcing their token shortly after I went on break. So I'm going to talk about all of that, but anything else you want me to talk about, just let me know, and I will talk about it on Monday there. Now, before I finish off today's episode, I wanted to quickly talk about the fact that while I was on break, Eric Connor messaged me randomly on Telegram. I did tell you guys I was checking Telegram every couple of days, but Eric Connor messaged me and he's like, hey, you want to restart ETH? And I'm like, oh, okay, what would that look like? And it's basically restarting the Into the Ether podcast. So ETH as it was used to be a newsletter, website, and podcast. We're just going to restart the podcast here, Into the Ether. As you guys know, I've been doing semi-regular episodes with Eric for a little while on the Daily Gwei drive-through, but Eric wants to restart the podcast and go beyond what we were doing with the drive-through. So what he wants to do is essentially have guests on, because guys know I don't really do guests on the Daily Gwei, and he wants to have different segments that are covered on there, and he basically wants to make Into the Ether the ETH Maxi podcast. He wants it just to be all about Ethereum. He doesn't want to go into other ecosystems or anything like that. He wants it to be all about Ethereum. He wants to do the ETH Hub weekly recap again, where me and him get on once a week and we talk about whatever, we'll kind of like do what we were doing with the drive-through, but it will be part of the Into the Ether brand. Now, I do want to make it clear here, guys, that the Daily Gwei is not going anywhere. Just because I'm doing Into the Ether again with Eric does not mean I'm spending any less time on the Daily Gwei. I will be doing the Daily Gwei as normal. There'll probably not be any more Daily Gwei drive-through episodes because we'll be doing them on the Into the Ether podcast instead. But I'm very glad that the Into the Ether kind of effort is being revived here for two main reasons. One, it gives us another Ethereum media, I guess, like organization that will exist outside of the Daily Gwei, outside of Bankless and a couple of others out there. And also the second reason is the fact that I think that we can stick to a more regular cadence, Eric and I, with doing this rather than doing on the Daily Gwei here. And I'm glad that it's more of like, I guess, like an ETH Maxi podcast where essentially you're only covering Ethereum stuff, not branching out into other stuff, because obviously Bankless has got a lot of criticism from the Ethereum community because they branched out. But as I've explained before, they did that for good reason. They did that for the fact that Bankless is supposed to be a crypto brand, not so much an Ethereum brand. They want to branch out to new users, and to do that, they can't just be covering Ethereum. They're also a business where they have employees. Like, I doubt Into the Ether is going to have employees or anything like that. It's really just going to be a way to further spread the word around the Ethereum ecosystem here. But yeah, it is going to be distinctly separate from the Daily Gwei. It does not mean the Daily Gwei is going to be stopping anytime soon or changing anytime soon. I'm still going to be doing my daily episodes, but I will be doing a weekly podcast with Eric on Into the Ether there, and be helping him in the background with a bunch of the other stuff that he wants to do with this. Now, final note on that one, the podcast will be going live on June 4th, the first one. So I believe that will be the one that me and Eric do as like basically a reintroduction to Into the Ether for all the people that had been listening from way back when. They're probably still subscribed to us on their podcast apps and things like that, and all the new people that will be listening from there. So I'm super pumped for that, but everything will remain the same with the Daily Gwei. I'll be doing both of them. I know I said before that I'm going to try and spend less time in crypto and limit myself. I think I can make it work. I think the whole kind of... I think that the main takeaway, besides the epiphany I had about the fact that normies aren't exposed to crypto at all when they're not looking at crypto, the other main epiphany I had is that if I don't strike a work-life balance with crypto, I will burn myself out again, and then it might be permanent next time. So I really don't want to get to that stage again, because before I took my break, it was really bad, guys. Like, I'll be honest with you, I was almost ready to call it completely quits at that point. I remember how bad I was. I had my finger over the button of disabling my Twitter account, and I stopped myself. I'm like, no, take your break and see how you feel. I'm glad I did that. But it also opened my eyes to the fact that I need to strike a good work-life balance. I can't continue doing what I've been doing for the past 7 years of non-stop crypto. It doesn't work anymore. I mean, I'm mentally just like exhausted all the time when I was doing that. I don't want to repeat that. I want to be charged. I want to be bullish all the time. But I want to do that without getting burnt out. And I think I can strike that balance there. Now, I did say that was going to be the last thing I spoke about. There's one other thing I want to talk about, and I have to, because it's about the ETH ETFs, and I feel like I haven't really taken many victory laps here because everyone already knows I was right. I don't have to keep going on about it. But one thing I do want to say is go back to my mantra. You guys know I love this mantra, but I want to go back to it again just to remind you about how powerful this mantra is. I always say that the narrative can be more powerful than the reality, but the reality will always catch up with the narrative. The narrative had been, over the last few months, that the ETH ETF was definitely being denied. It was not getting approved. The SEC hates ETH, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And you could be forgiven for believing that, given that what we had seen, given all the rumors that we had seen. But again, it was a narrative. There was no reality reflecting this. There is no SEC lawsuit against anyone that we've seen. We haven't seen the details of it yet, saying that they think ETH is a security or trying to go after ETH as a security or any of that sort of stuff. There was nothing really from the SEC that we saw. And then the reality ended up hitting where they approved the ETFs. So until you see the reality, everything else around that is speculation. And the reality will always hit. A narrative does not last forever. The reality will hit whether it's now, whether it's sometime in the future, but it will hit at some point. And I know, there are some exceptions to the rule where essentially there are narratives that can persist for a long time. But again, like those are more belief style narratives than speculative narratives, like belief systems like religions, for example, rather than speculative narratives around what the SEC is thinking, right? This is very different things here. But when it comes to crypto, the ecosystem that runs on narratives, you need to understand these narratives have an expiration date. And once they expire, when reality hits, they expire very, very quickly. And that's what we saw with the ETH ETF stuff this week. That's what we're going to see with a bunch of other things going forward. So just don't get caught offside by that. Stick to the facts and circumstances. Speculate where you have to, but make sure you're doing it in a balanced way. And make sure you're listening to people who aren't ambulance chasers, who aren't clickbait people, who aren't just saying bullshit that makes no sense. Honestly, if you see someone saying stuff that makes absolutely zero sense more than once, you can probably safely ignore that person, because it means that it's a trend for them. It means that that is the thing that they do. It means that it's something they're not going to stop doing. I can forgive someone who does it once or once in a while, and maybe they do it accidentally, or maybe they do it out of kind of like frustration or something like that. But someone who continuously says crap, who continuously spreads FUD, who continuously says things that don't make sense, like the Bitcoin maximalists, for example, against Ethereum, you can safely ignore those people. They are complete noise. There is zero signal to be had there, and you're filling your head with just bullshit. And I'm not going to say that you should only listen to one person or this person or other person. I'm not even going to say that you should listen to me. I've always maintained that you should just follow the facts and circumstances and make sure that you're not getting psyoped into various different things that can become big narratives within crypto, but then the reality sets in and you're stuck holding the bag of the narrative if that's what you're kind of doing with your trading, with your investing, or anything else out there. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all on Monday. Thanks everyone.